Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and a very good day to all of you, my dear students. I hope that you are doing well. A very warm welcome to you in the 19th lecture of report writing skills. If I talk about what we have just covered in the previous lecture and the one before it, we're trying to focus more on a specific form of writing, which is email, the electronic version of a mail, and the manner in which it has been discussed. We have tried to give you an introduction, an overview, its purpose, advantages, talking about its format, then its detailed structure, how it begins, how it ends, and then we talked about the email etiquettes, the do's and don'ts which are required to be there in mind while writing an email. Once you know them, you can apply them. And at the end of those lecture, we talked about vocabulary and some useful expressions which can help you to write your email effectively. But we can of course never ignore the significance of the mail itself. Yes, I am referring to the letter, whose electronic version we have just considered and which we have studied in the previous lecture, and that is going to be our focus in our today's lecture. We'll be talking about letter writing. Why? Because if we just look back in time, it's this form of writing that we have come across throughout our different grades, different level and classes of education. I even remember as well to get this question on write a letter to your friend, write a letter to your family, or anyone. But we have been writing, we have been practicing, we have been going through this exercise of letter writing. At that time, of course, you consider it, this is the format and that's how it is supposed to be written, because that's the way it has been provided within the book. That's the way it has been taught. But now is the age and now is the time to realize its significance and to develop those expertise, those tools and skills through which you can simply justify and determine which form of letter to use and in what form, in what way, in what manner. Everything has to be considered, and for that our today's lecture is going to give you the basic concept of letter writing. So if I talk about introducing you to this form of writing, we can consider it to be a communication with people at distance. It's a mode of writing, it's a mode of communication through which you are interacting with people at distance. Of course, you can find the analogies with some other form of writing, but once we start looking into the details, you'll start realizing this form of writing has its own significance, and due to the same reason it's in use within different professional environment and organizations. In addition to communication taking place at distance, you can say it's like a matter of common concern. You have a topic of discussion and it becomes a matter of common concern. You have a common issue to highlight and common issue for discussion, and this becomes the mode through which you are carrying out the interaction to resolve, be it a query, some confusion, or some subject matter which is being discussed, and that subject matter of course is a matter of common concern, which is why you are writing a letter or receiving a letter from another person. Another thing regarding letter writing is that it's a mode of maintaining good relationship as well, and you can place this point in a scenario in which you're writing to a friend, or a scenario you're writing to a family member, or even it could be a case in which you are writing to some officer or a colleague in a working organization. So to maintain some good relationship, you write a letter. And another important point is that you keep a record of information, and that written record, if it's written of course, can remain permanent. This is the plus point, and this is the advantage, and this is also another important factor to be considered, like a purpose of letter writing, that to maintain a written record of the information which is being shared among two interlocutors or two persons who are interacting, you use this form of writing known as a letter. Now, with special reference to what basically can be the purpose, what is a purpose, why you are writing a letter, what could be the basic reason? Well, if we relate it with the points which we have just covered in our first or the previous slide, you can say, of course, maintaining good relationship means you're trying to keep in touch with the people around you with whom you have to interact. In addition to this, of course, letters are also used for your job applications. You will see the manner once we start looking into the details of these forms of letter writing, the different kinds of letter writing, that this is also one of the purpose. These purposes can be easily remembered once you go through the different slides, and those slides are related to the different kinds of letter which we are going to study together. So one of the form of letter writing is the one which you use to apply for a job. You find some vacancy in a newspaper and you want to apply for that vacant position because you consider yourself worthy of that position and you simply want to apply. One mode is you write a letter to that organization or to the HR department of that organization that you want to simply offer your services and to become part of that working organization. That is something which you do in the form of an application, and that application, of course, is like a letter. Then job application is not the end, of course. Letter writing also involves getting some answers, and you get the answers by first raising a question, and that question is basically raised in the form of a letter of inquiry, or you want to inquire something. That is also done through this form of letter. That's of course a specific form of letter that we are going to study as well, but that is also one of the purposes of writing a letter. Then of course, whenever you write a letter, it will always have some sort of information that will convert it, of course, into a letter. So there needs to be an information, there has to be some information, and that is why it is one of the purposes of writing a letter. You want to convey an information. In addition to this, letter is also a mode of writing which is used to raise complaints, which is used to complain regarding something which has happened which was not supposed to happen. You were expecting one thing, you were getting another. Of course, it becomes a source of confusion and you want to highlight it. So the basic way through which you do it by highlighting the issue is you write a letter, and that letter is basically used as a mode of complaining. You want to complain regarding the matter which has happened to you, so that is also one of the purposes. And of course, talking about the formal structuring, the formal category of letter writing, that is the ultimate mode of business communication. All the transaction, and transaction means communication and the interaction taking place, which is done in a business scenario. The written record of it is maintained, and that is basically done through letter writing. So this is also one of the purposes. Hope you're going to remember them. If that becomes difficult, of course, try to relate these purposes by the different forms of letter writing that you need to know and that we will be studying. Of course, you're expected to write them in future as well, because such scenarios would be provided to you in the practical life, in the practical environment. So if we move ahead and talk about some of the advantages that you get as a result of writing a letter. What's so special? Why this becomes the topic of importance? Why is it in the forefront? Why is it into the limelight? Why is this one better than the other forms of writing? Of course, we shouldn't say that this form of writing is better than the other. Each form of writing has its own advantages. I can say pros and cons, but talking about the pros or the advantages, the first one, you can realize it and understand it very easily, is nothing are needed to receive a letter. you won't be required to get an internet connection first, or a Wi-Fi or a dongle or any other means to receive it. I'm not asking for electricity, I'm not asking for internet. All you need to have is yourself. If you are there to receive, the postman will come and simply take your signature. You are here to receive the letter, you are here to get your post. You should be there, of course. If you are there, you receive the letter. That is one advantage. Moving ahead, as mentioned and discussed, it is like a permanent physical record of communication, because one interaction taking place between two persons, if it's oral, how do you expect to maintain a written record of it? Even if I talk about this minutes of meeting, of course you can search it online as well to get a detail what are meeting minutes or minutes of meeting. They are also maintained to keep a written account of all the opinions, suggestions which are basically coming from the people who are participating in a meeting. Their opinions are kept in written form, and that document or that doc which is maintaining their opinion, their points, their reservation, is basically minutes of meeting. So although there are modes, but these modes are there existing because of the fact that oral communication itself is not that permanent, and therefore you need something to make your communication more physical, more permanent, and for that purpose your letter serves the job, because it maintains this physical record of communication. Moving ahead, difficult to falsify because of an individual's signature or the note paper of a workplace. Whenever you are there in a working organization, because now everything has advanced, but even back in time, I would say, within a working organization, they always want to authenticate the information which is existing within an organization and the information which is being disseminated from an organization. For that purpose, to authenticate, they have this specific document in which there is a logo. There is a logo in the background of that document, and that turns it into an official letter, an authentic letter. Of course, you call it as a letterhead as well. So either they use this note paper or a letterhead of a workplace, and to authenticate it to the next level, of course, you take the signature of the person who is, of course, writing something on that letterhead. So that person is claiming by doing this signature or by signing, writing the initials, that this writing belongs to him or her and she owns it. That is the point. And this is the advantage which you also get as a result of writing a letter, that it becomes difficult to falsify because of the signature as well as the note paper of a workplace. This is also something which you can clearly realize and feel, because we all have been going through this process of letter writing, and especially the letter that you write with your own hand. Over here I have a left hand because I am a lefty. Of course, you'll have this right hand for writing a letter, but the point here is that handwritten letter becomes more interactive and personal, because even if I look at a document which is typed, which is like a computer generated document, a Microsoft Word document, that seems, of course, official. An official thing being used within a formal environment with formal writing, of course, is acceptable. But in case of letter writing, of course, you have a category that we are going to study. You have informal mode of letter writing as well. Well, in that scenario, the one letter which is written, and of course which is handwritten, is more interactive and more personal, because the moment you see the writing, I'm sure we all know the way we write, and we can even recognize one another through our handwriting, because every one of us has a separate style, their idiosyncrasy, I would say, of handwriting. They have their own style, and even if I talk about it, people interpret it in different way as well. That one who is writing straight is very straightforward. The one who is writing in a rightward direction wants to, think about what's coming ahead. The one who is writing a bit tilted towards the left means that he is more nostalgic or always thinking about the past. So they try to interpret it in different ways. writing is a reflection of you, and even the one who are writing in small, well, they interpret it in different way. They recommend that you should write with larger size, your letters should be larger in size. That means your thought is also very much clear. I also do the exercise as well of making my writing clear, because even I myself like it when I see the writing itself. But the point here is that your handwriting makes the document that you're writing more personal, and the other person takes it in a similar way as well. That letter which is handwritten would be more personal. The other person would recognize it. Yeah, this is the person who has written the letter all by himself or herself. So why not give it a reading? So this is the advantage as well of a handwritten letter. But that doesn't mean that you simply reject the significance or the use of a personal computer or a laptop or smartphone. Of course, accept the gadgets, the technology should be there, integrate both, use them side by side, and that will make you even a better person. Another advantage of letter writing is that you get the space of placing, enclosure of small objects. Enclosure and of small objects, if there is anything that you want to be there in addition to the letter or the document which has the letter, and you envelope it. So within that envelope, of course, the things which you are placing becomes the enclosure, and you can place them, you can send them alongside the letter. This is also one of the advantage, that you can send anything alongside the letter itself as enclosure in case of your letter writing. Another advantage, once again, being free from this soft mode of communication, soft copy, or I would say the digital mode of communication, the electronic mode, the e-mode of communication, is that you don't have to worry about malicious softwares and viruses. Well, you get free from it as well. That is not the case that some virus is going to become part of that enveloped and sealed letter. So this is also another plus point when we talk about letter writing. And if you relate it with this handwritten, of course, so this one, these both are quite interrelated. You can improve your writing skills if you are writing it. This is the point. I'm not saying handwriting, I'm saying even if you are typing, this letter itself enhances your writing skills. These are some of the advantages which you get. Now we are looking at the types of letter writing. If I refer back to the modes of letter writing which we have come across, which we have been doing, of course, to some extent we can call it to be formal as well in certain situations, but generally the kind of questions that we have been getting are most often the one that you have to write to a friend, a family, or some relative. So they basically fall into the category of informal letter. But in an official environment, for which the situation in which you are about to enter in your upcoming future will demand this skill of formal letter writing, and therefore will be studying them together side by side. So you can see the similarities, of course, which would be there alongside some of the differences that you need to keep in mind as well. Talking about the informal mode of writing, starting of course from the things which are more familiar to you, are known as the personal letters, because you try to reflect yourself, you try to be more conversational and personalized with your writing. Even it could be the handwriting. Of course, you have a friendly style, you want to develop this intimacy, you want to develop friendship, you want to strengthen your relationship, be it a family member or a relative or a friend or a fellow, but the point is you want to be friendly. Addressed to a family and friends. And talking about the format, it has the following sections. You have the heading, you have salutations, you have a body, and once you have written the body, subscription and signature. Now what are these sections? It's time to look into the details of these sections. Starting from the first one, which is heading, at the very beginning of this format of an informal letter, you have a heading, and in this heading, this refers to the details of the sender's address. Of course, sender's name would come, full name, alongside the address. Then you're going to place the date, and keeping in mind that there shouldn't be any full stops. So this is also a point to remember. And then you place it in journal at the top right hand corner of the letter. This is like part of the format that you need to keep in mind, that it has to be there at the top right corner of your document. If you're looking at me, I should say this is the document. You have to write a letter from left to right, top right corner of the letter. Over here, this heading is going to come. You move ahead, you're going to move from heading towards salutation, and within this salutation you basically are trying to greet the other person. So you basically greet by addressing and using the word dear. Now the word dear is followed by the name of your friend or your fellow, and right after it you are placing a comma. This is not a comma, you basically place such comma. I wanted to draw a tick basically. Sometime I miss it. Okay, once you have salutated, after the salutation you get the body, and within this body you start with an opening sentence. It could be of this form, just to guide you to start your own practice. I'm writing to you after a long time, lovely to hear from you. So comma means it can be, the informal tone could be in this way, or if it's even more informal, you can simply take a start in this form. You have been writing, you can have a good idea as well. Once you have opened the conversation within the body, you come towards the main message. Brief messages, of course, within a conversational manner. The point that you want to highlight, or the point that you really want to make, is afterwards. After what? Opening sentence, the one which has simply started the conversation. Main message complete, you have communicated everything, you want to close the conversation, you provide a closing sentence. You express regards and hopes of further communication to your addressee. So it could be, please give my regards to the other person, please give my regards to your uncle, please give my regards to your father, please give my regards to anyone to whom you want to give regards. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Of course, developing that link, instigating a response from the other person to come. That's how you structure your body of the informal letter. Once you have done this, then comes the stage of subscription. In subscription, you basically vary the structure depending upon the nature and the relationship which is there between you and your addressee, you being the addresser and the other person being the addressee. So the nature of the relationship and the extent that relationship is strong and maintained, you basically structure your communication, and with special reference to subscription. Now let's have a look at what basically are the different forms of subscription. Your affectionate son, your affectionate daughter, or yours affectionately / meaning another option is yours lovingly. Now these are the options for relationship. In case of your friends, you can say yours sincerely. And one point to be remembered over here is, of course, this is for friends, this one is for family. The point here is yours is a possessive. I'm talking about this word. So there shouldn't be any apostrophe. This comma that you place over here, in journal we are like writing you are, and then we place a comma over here and then this S. So this comma is basically not allowed here because this is not a comma. This is a space in which you basically have to indicate, or you can write it as this book is yours. And now in this expression, the word yours is not in the form in which there has to be an apostrophe. It's like a possessive case, and you want to show that the possession belongs to you. In a similar way, you have to keep in mind that the yours being used over here is the same possessive one, therefore there shouldn't be any comma. Why highlighting this point is that I have seen in many letters, students placing this comma. Due to certain habit, they place it. Well, this has to be avoided, and that's why I did all the practice over here. Hopefully this line will also make you remember that this comma shouldn't be here. Just write it in a simpler way. Yours, and then sincerely, affectionately. Let's move ahead. Once you have made the subscription, time is here to provide your own details. The details of the sender. Over here, of course, you're going to place your signature, your name, your detail name, of course. If it's like a relationship in which you consider your single name or your first name will suffice, of course, you can write it. But we, being the teachers, would recommend that you write a full name, because that is how you write or you structure your informal letter as well. So nothing wrong with using your full name either. Once you have provided the details right below the subscription, there are certain informal mode of letter writing in which you write this letter. I have seen it as well. PS, which refers to postscript. Earlier, when I didn't know the meaning of PS, I used to take it as personal secret. But that wasn't the case. You know, this is something which I tell you all the time, that while teaching you and while learning things myself, improving my knowledge to be able to guide you in a better way, I learn new things too. So this was new for me as well. I liked it, and that's why I wanted to make part of the lecture as well. You basically write PS to add information when the writer has already signed off. Some additional information which has to be provided, which has to be made part of your letter, because it's important. Then after the script it is coming, therefore you say postscript, meaning after script, and then you provide the information by writing PS. This is also another mode of initiating a response. You want the other party which is receiving a letter to provide you with a response, then you write specially this abbreviation RSVP. I simply checked it. I used to check it basically back in past to even remember what does it refer to. I guess the expression in Latin, respondes, and then some other words for these letters, SVP. No need to remember it, because in journal we write RSVP and its meaning should be known to you. It's basically to extend an invitation which requires a response. RSVP basically means please respond, please reply. This is the basic meaning. So once you write it, that means you are asking the other person to provide you with a response. Now the discussion of informal letter is complete, and now you're in a position to move towards the formal mode of letter writing. Now let's have a look at how a formal letter is and how it is supposed to be written. First, the general introduction. Of course, if we talk about formal letter, it's also known as the official or the business letter, because it's the mode of letter writing which is used in a working environment, in a business setting, in a business scenario. Then, of course, it's like an official letter for the individuals who are holding official position. Everything is happening in an official environment to maintain a written record of all the events, all the activities, and especially the communication. This mode of letter writing is used, and that's why it's called as the formal letter, because it's used in an official scenario. What are those scenarios? Of course, they could be your institute, the government departments, even your own firm or business organization where you are working yourself, you being among the administrators. But the point here is that you use this letter writing and its form for communication among your colleagues as well as the subordinates. Another point which is important, especially with reference to the formal letter, is that how it is basically different from the informal letter writing. First, to understand this point, I should mention here that in case of your informal mode of letter writing, you have already seen the structure, you providing the detail regarding yourself, of course, and then moving ahead with salutation, then of course opening, middle, ending, subscription, signing off with of course signature, and then RSVP and PS. So you know the format. But one thing which is added into all these points and all these sections is that the receivers, the person who is going to receive, that person's address is also made part of the main document or the letter which is being written. It's also included within the official letter, tick basically. So that becomes part of the written document as well. This is basically the difference, because back in that form, basically, once you have written the letter, you fold it, you're going to place it in an envelope. You'll envelope it. On the back side of that envelope, at the top, you're going to place this receiver's address at the top. And on the left hand side at the bottom, your own address would come. That is basically the format or the mode of sending an informal letter when it's enveloped. So the receiver's address is basically found on an envelope. That is the point which I am making. But in case of your formal letters, to make things formal, this thing is mandatory, because of course this is the document which is disseminated, circulated among different departments of an office, of an organization. That doesn't mean that it will remain either closed or open. The point here is that the paper itself is circulated. It's not enveloped, it's not sealed, which means the address is not expected or supposed to be there on an envelope, whereas on the contrary, the address should be there in the document itself, so that all the persons who are getting a copy of that letter should know who is sending and to whom the letter is being sent. That's why the receiver's address is also made part of that letter, and that's how this point becomes important. And that's why I've told you the whole story, how it's different from the informal mode of letter writing. Now move ahead. Of course, being used in a formal environment, and we have been highlighting the environment, the nature of that environment. You're having multiple tasks to perform, doing many things at a time, having short time for these things to be read. So it has to be short, it has to be direct in the business setting. It has to be direct, highlighting the main point. And you will see in the format how you are highlighting the main point by organizing your information in a structured way, dividing it into proper sections so that the reader will simply say, okay, it's about this, fine. There's something to be read, and therefore I'm going to go into details. You'll see. This is basically the quality which makes it more appealing in such a business setting. You providing a subject or a line of reference, and that person to whom it is being addressed simply looking at the subject, okay, this is the one I have been looking for, finally I got it, okay, let's give it a reading, let's see what's there within the body. So therefore, the addition of this subject line is also another important component, in addition to the receiver's address, which is also made a part of a formal mode of letter writing. So now you have this general introduction. If you have to talk about formal letter, what is it about, how is it written, how is it different from an informal mode of letter writing. Looking at the format and the structure, how it is supposed to be written. Now remember the points which I have just mentioned, which I have just discussed in detail. Now you're going to see some similarities and some differences. You're going to have this heading in the very beginning, in which of course you have the sender's complete address followed by the name. So you have to of course provide your name, your details. Name doesn't mean the name itself, the title. You consider it necessary. Provide your address. So these things will become part of your heading. Once you have provided the heading, you'll move ahead and come towards inside address. This inside address refers to the point which I have just mentioned in the beginning. Detail of the person being addressed alongside name of the company and organization. So now The person who is being addressed, the person who is going to receive the letter will be the target, will be the focus, and his or her details should come right after the heading, of course, in the inside address. Once you have provided the inside address, you will move ahead towards salutation and greetings. Now these salutation and greetings, of course, vary depending upon the acquaintance, the kind of relation which is there between the addresser and the addressee. For example, if the addressee is new to you, now understand the situations. You are not aware of the other person, you don't know his nature or her nature, you are not even aware of the name. So you don't know who is your basically addressee. So in that case, you would have seen certain letters, even if I talk about the electronic version. So you receive letters in this way, you are being addressed, dear sir / ma'am. Or in case they are aware that we are talking to a male, dear sir. They are not aware of the name, so they are going to simply say dear sir. In case you are a girl or a lady, dear ma'am. So that is how they are going to show their courtesy, their respect, because they are not aware of the name. In case someone knows you or you are knowing that someone, that other person, of course you're going to address them by their surname. Again, the surname being used for providing respect, for reflecting courtesy. For example, over here we have dear Mr. Naeem. For Abdullah Naeem, even we can say dear Miss Minhas. Let's suppose the name of the lady is Maryam Minhas. Dear Mrs. Kashif. For example, the name is Saima Kashif. So therefore, you have Mrs. Kashif. That is how you are addressing them by their names, by their surnames, because they are someone known to you. You are addressing them on one end, you are greeting them, and of course you are giving them the courtesy which they deserve, especially being the reader and the addressee of your communication. Once this salutation is complete, now comes the situation of providing the subject. Subject, once again, a line of discrimination, point of differentiation between an informal mode of writing and the formal mode of letter writing. Over here you have to provide a subject, because this will be the focus of your reader. They'll say, okay, what's to be seen here? What does the writer have to offer? So you have to introduce the topic of your letter, and it has to be a very brief single sentence, because the moment it will get lengthy, it is not going to have the impact. It should be very concise, again applying the C's of conciseness, clarity, concreteness, completeness. Everything should be there. Now apply just on a single subject. All 7 C's should be there. That's how these can be applied. That's how you're going to make your subject more effective. Remember the points in mind and then develop the subject. Once you have provided the subject, then comes the stage of writing your body. In a similar way as you write the body of an informal letter, you'll have the introduction. You, after introducing the component, come towards your main message, and once the main message has been provided and communicated, you move towards the conclusion. Summing it all up, you come towards the conclusion, and that is how the body becomes complete. At the end, you move towards the next step, and which is basically your complimentary closing, or you call as subscription. Well, it depends on the salutation. Once again, directly relate your complimentary closing, or I should call it as subscription, with the kind of salutation which you, or the kind of greeting which you have made at the beginning. Once again, developing or keeping in mind the scenario which was there at the beginning. Someone who is known to you or someone who is totally unknown to me. How am I going to address them? How did I greet them? In a similar way, you have to close the communication or do the subscription. In case of an addressee not known to you, new of course, as dear sir, dear ma'am, you are going to say yours faithfully. And moving ahead, in case of an addressee known to you, then yours sincerely. So this is basically the general format. I'm talking about the conventions, the mode which is basically standardized and followed. This is the pattern. This is like the format which is used, especially in case of the addressee known and the addressee which is unknown. You can do the practice, you can find the similarities and differences yourself as well by looking into the details, of course. Of course, after this complimentary closing and the subscription, you now move ahead towards the stage of signature. And signature once again means not just doing the signature, of course, providing your details, the name, the title and the address, everything should be coming there. So of course it would be coming under the complimentary closing, and right after it the sender's name, designation, name of the organization, working, everything, the details should be there so that further correspondence is possible. Once that is complete, you'll move towards the next stage, which is enclosure. Things which will be provided in addition to that written document, of course, that formal letter. Everything should be there in the form of enclosure. All the things which you are providing, for example, if there is an additional document in addition to the letter which you have written, something supporting evidence which you are providing alongside that letter, so that would come by mentioning it first on letter ENCL. That's why I've written it over here. ENCL dot means you are enclosing something, and that enclosure is indicated by this abbreviation, and whatsoever is there should be mentioned, and then of course it should be placed beside or alongside that letter. Any document, anything which you want to disseminate or circulate alongside the letter would be your enclosure, and it should come as well, listed after the signature. So you have to provide it in the form of a list. All the supporting documents which are there, they will be provided after the signature. Carbon copy, another important component. Just the way we have electronic version, you are well aware of the concept that I mentioned in case of our email. The same concept lies over here, that all the people, names of all the individuals receiving a copy of that letter, of course they will be receiving it, their names should be placed first. Of course it would be coming after the enclosure. You're going to place this double C with a colon at the bottom of the letter, and then you're going to provide the list of all the individuals to whom a copy of this letter should be provided. Their names should be there, their names should be listed, and of course they would be coming after the enclosure. So this is basically how you prepare a letter, and then it comes to the end. Now over here you have a basic format of letter writing. The general conventions are being provided to you over here. There are minor differences, but still it has to be a point which should be discussed over here. In journal we basically have two types of format. We have a block format and we have a modified block format. We have just seen the formatting of how you basically structure your informal letter and of course the formal letter, but with special reference to, I'm talking about the formal mode of letter writing. These are the formats which are basically practiced, which are basically applied, used. So in case of your block format, main point to remember here is that all elements are placed on the left margin. In your case, this is the left hand margin. Things are placed on the left hand side. The second format, like a modification of a block format, which is why being called as the modified block format, almost the same. Things which are different is the date and the closing, which comes on the right hand side. In your case, over here. This right left confusion can be removed by coming towards the details. So if I talk about the block format, now you have a picture in front of you as well. Most common layout of a business letter, because this is the layout which is generally used entire letter is placed on the left hand side. It's placed left, it's also justified. You will have an idea of justification in case of your MS Office, Microsoft Word document, where you have these keys at the top of making things in italic, in bold. On the right, there is an icon or a key. By clicking on it, you justify your text. It gets itself balanced. Everything is aligned around boundaries, single line. Text is not edited, so it has to be justified. Another point is single spaced. There should be a difference of one at enter. The line spacing should be single spaced. You click on this button on a keyboard, one enter, that means it is single spaced. You press it twice, that means now things would be double spaced. So you basically have to click on enter once to make your lines single spaced. That double clicking is only allowed here in case of your paragraphs. So in case of your paragraphs, whenever you have to indicate that now from one paragraph you're moving towards the second paragraph, then you're going to click on enter twice, making it double spaced. So this is basically the concept and the rules, regulation and conventions of your block format. One picture is also here to guide you. If you simply divide it into section, this is one section, then you providing detail, ending, everything is, if you can realize, placed on the left hand side, and this side is being kept a bit more empty. This is like a format, a good example here to make things more clear. One thing which is like missing is at the top, just to make it more apparent and visible for you. The sender's address basically comes at the top, but these are the things which are coming afterwards. So you can see date on the left hand side, then the addressee, your details are also coming over here. The person who are interacting, their details are here, the addressee's details, and then moving ahead, this is basically the beginning. You are greeting, salutation is here, then you are basically coming up with the body of the letter, introducing things, coming up with main message, then concluding things, then sincerely means of course subscription, coming towards the end, complimentary closing. Over here your name is here, over here you can do some sort of signature. Point here is that this is how things are aligned on the left hand side, and this is basically known as the sample of a block format letter. To have a good idea, if we look at the modified block format, you're going to see the differences. Almost the same as block format. Why almost? The only differences or the exceptions are your closing and complimentary closing, of course, and the date is placed on the right hand side, and that is how you see this is the area where you are providing the details of date and the specific date on which things are happening, being communicated, and the closing is also there on the right hand side. The rest of it is once again on the left hand side. So that is how you're getting an idea. The example is going to clarify things even better. Once again, date is there on the right hand side, then details of the addressee left, your salutation left, the body is also on the left, and once again you are shifting here towards closing things, you are coming towards right, and then your name and signature once again would come over here. Point here is that this is how you aligned your text, your letter, either into a block format or a modified block format. These are the things to remember. Hopefully you can apply them, you'll keep them in mind, and you'll probably be getting the instructions either from your working organization or, in case your academic environment, from your teachers, from your evaluators. The next step, the next phase of our lecture, with special reference to letter writing, is the guidelines which are to be kept in mind. Some of the important points which should be remembered, which would help you to write an effective letter, a letter which is going to make a difference. How you can make it effective is by providing factual information. I don't think it will be that difficult for you to understand what factual information is, because we have been talking about it. We know related to facts and figures, and what do you get as a result of these facts and figures? Impartial communication, in which the element of subjectivity is minimized, brought to zero or minimum. But the point here is, your letter is more effective, it's more impartial. It's going to have a difference. Then, with reference to the 7 C's, I would say, you have to state your message or messages with clarity. Clarity is just one C, but of course, it is going in line with all the other C's of communication as well. So, everything has to be covered alongside this clarity. Moving ahead, you have to avoid the use of slangs. Slangs meaning those words, of course, which can be abusive, which could be harsh, very strong in their tone and their impact on your readers. You have to avoid the use of slangs as well, which is going to change the tone of your letter towards the negative side. So it has to be avoided as well. Moving ahead, you have to keep in mind to cross-check. Checking and cross-checking, proofreading and editing, of course, applying that third stage of the writing process, in which you are revising, checking, changing, editing, just to remove all the errors which may have a negative impact over your readers. That is also something to be avoided, has to be minimized, and that is something which is going to remove all the grammatical errors from your writing. Being respectful by using a polite tone in your letter writing. I can say it's once again one C, and that C is courtesy, and that also takes me to another C of consideration. So consider your audience, their background knowledge, their understanding, their nature, their expectation. Based on that, develop a tone which is courteous, you basically respecting them, and this respect is going to have a difference because you are being polite throughout your letter writing. These are some of the guidelines that you need to remember as well. Now we come to the stage in which we're going to look at the different forms of writing, and those forms of writing a letter have their own separate objectives. Now just look back, think of the purposes which we have talked about, and with reference to those purposes, you'll be getting different forms of letter, different kinds of letter. We have the following categories and kinds of letter. We start from the inquiry letter. We have the complaint letter, used for making complaints, of course. We have this category of cover letter. We have this category of writing a good news letter, of course indicating that you have a good news, and the letter used for writing or providing a good news becomes a good news letter. In case if it is communicating some bad news, of course it becomes a bad news letter. So starting from the inquiry letter, a letter which is used for raising some sort of inquiry. This is how, if you have to define it in just few words, you can say it, but looking into the detail, talking about a structure with some examples. So a letter of inquiry basically asks someone for specific information. You want some person to respond and provide some information. That's why you're raising an inquiry. In certain cases, such as a request for promotional material, these are certain situations being provided to you in which this response or the nature of this response can vary, and you have to structure your inquiry letter accordingly. So talking about situation number 1, in which making a request for promotional material, recipient will have a clear interest in responding to your letter because it's more or less related to a promotional material. Promotional material is something which is going to provide advantage in the long run. So response will become quick. But in other cases, such as request for some specific information which requires some sort of detailed analysis or study, So study and detailed analysis is something which can cause a bit of boredom, and of course will be a bit time consuming, as a result of which the other person may ask for some time, and therefore of course you can infer and deduce that the other person will be a bit hesitant to provide you an immediate response. They are going to say, okay, we will provide a response, but after some time. So if we look at the text itself, the recipient, starting from the very beginning, in other cases such as a request for specific information on a product, you are being asked for providing some specific information of a product, so of course you have to research over it. Then you may or may not be as motivated to respond compared with the situation in which it was a promotional material. So you won't be that quick in responding because this one is demanding detailed study. So situation varies, and therefore structure of your letter would also vary. Consequently, try to make your tone of the letter more friendly and make it easy for the recipient to identify and provide the information you need. So keeping things friendly, keeping things simple, and making it easy for the other person to identify and provide the information they require. So this is the point which has to be kept in mind, especially while writing a letter of inquiry. Looking at things from a broader spectrum, your letter of inquiry would ask someone for specific information, and therefore you need to clarify your intent. What is the intention of writing this letter? At the very introduction, you have to provide this thing. Once you have provided, another thing to consider is you have to specify your needs within the discussion. What basically is required? You are inquiring for something, you provide it in discussion. And another thing which you need to keep in mind is that the conclusion should be very precise, because you have already asked, demanded something, and you have discussed and talked about it in your discussion section, the main body and the central portion of that body. Therefore, it has to be concluded precisely. The things, of course, which you have to highlight in discussion should be very clear, and that's why I've written them in the form of bullets: degree requirements, equipment cost, performance records, or any other thing. It has to be specified, be it in a subject and of course coming in the body, but it has to be clear and concise and concrete. That is the point which I am making. Over here we have a sample for you. If you look into it, of course, once again, address coming at the top, and then you are highlighting the details of the person who is basically the addressee over here. Then you are coming up with salutation over here: Dear Dr. Gomez, and the full name of course is here. I'm writing you in hopes of finding out more about, this is basically the blood glucose monitoring system. That is the subject, and that is why it's being highlighted, and that's why it's being referred to, which a representative at LifeScan informed me that your clinic is currently using. Now you're going to make the inquiry. Originally I saw LifeScan advertisement of this new device in January this date, and became very interested. I wrote the company and got much useful information, but was recommended to write several users. And for a technical report that I am writing, I'm over here, I need some help with the following question. So if you look over here, you have listed things very clearly what you actually require. That's how you basically clarify your needs in a specific manner. Now 1, 2, 3, you have made things very clearly. You are raising questions, and of course you are inquiring for these. You're going to get a response, provided you have listed them, you have provided them in a way the other person can understand your things very clearly. And then you are summing it all up. LifeScan representative indicated that your clinic is one of the leaders in the implementing of new technology for diabetes, and therefore I am eager to hear from you. Thank you for your time, and I hope to hear from you soon. Again, a thank you note, and then closing remarks. You are providing the subscription, then your own detail. But the point here is that you have to clarify your needs, your demands. If these are listed properly, you will not have any issue of miscommunication or any sort of confusion. So that is how you basically structure especially your letter of inquiry. Hopefully the example was comprehensible and made the difference.
Meet Mr. Darcy, who is the managing director of a publishing company. A few days ago, he received the manuscript of a book from a writer. In order to give feedback, he needs to write a letter, but he doesn't know much about letter writing. Let's help Mr. Darcy by looking over the format and some important elements of a letter. As a letter is handwritten, it is a permanent physical record of communication. As compared to the email, letters are free from all malwares and viruses and has a more personal feel to it. It has two basic types, informal and formal. Informal letters are personal in nature as they are addressed to family and friends. They are divided into the following sections: heading, salutation, body, subscription, and signature. Formal letters are also known as official or business letters. The format of the formal letter has the following sections. Heading has the sender's complete address followed by the name. Inside address has recipient's details along with the name of the organization. Salutation has greetings. Subject introduces the topic. The body has introduction, main message, and conclusion. Subscription has courteous phrases like yours sincerely, which is followed by the sender's signature and the list of documents that may be attached with the letter. There are two basic formats that Mr. Darcy may follow for composing the letter: block format and modified block format. In block format, the entire letter is left aligned and justified. Double spacing is between paragraphs, but the text is generally single-spaced. Modified block format is almost the same as block format. The only exception is that the date and closing is placed on the right. Some general guidelines that Mr. Darcy should follow for composing an effective letter are: provide factual information, state the message with clarity, avoid the use of slang, avoid grammatical errors, and be respectful by using a polite tone. Now Mr. Darcy is all set to compose the letter.
With this, I would like to conclude our today's lecture. I'm going to discuss complaint letter alongside the cover letter, the good news letter, the bad news letter in detail alongside some examples in the upcoming lecture. Till then, take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next lecture. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you.